Okay. Hello, everyone. I have pleasure in opening the council meeting of the 12th of August 2025 at 6 p.m. and welcome everyone in attendance. The City of Vincent would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and to pay our respects to elders past and present, acknowledging that as the City of Vincent, we have a role to play in working towards reconciliation and justice for First Nations people. I notice that everyone's here, and so no apologies are required nor leave of absence. So we'll go straight to public question time. Can I please get an indication with a show of hands as to whether there are any members of the public who wish to speak tonight? Okay, no worries. So you may come forward in any order, and I'll just explain the process. And what you do is you just say your name and what suburb you reside in. If you are speaking to one of the agenda items tonight, could you please indicate which item it is? These items are going to be brought forward onto the agenda, so they will be the first items that we speak to. If you don't want to be recorded, you just need to tell us and we can turn off the live stream. Okay, so you just need to give an indication. You are timed to 3 minutes and you'll hear a bell when we've got to that time. So please come forward in any order. Thank you.
Hello there, David Jennings, Rosewood, item 12.4. We really appreciate the council considering Rosewood's offer in acquiring the land. This would benefit our residents and community at large. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Andrew Seeley. I'm speaking on item 5.3 and I live at 23 Brookman Street.
Sorry, just confirming for this, that's 9.3, the William Street Framework?
5.3.
Sorry? It's 9.3 for this week. Okay, that's fine. It's the William Street Framework. Yes, please keep going.
No problems. So yes, my name is Andrew Seeley. I live at 23 Brookman Street. As residents, we've written to various levels of government in order to raise our concerns about the William Street planning framework, including the City of Perth, the Minister for Planning, the West Australian Planning Commission, the Heritage Council, and the Minister for Local Government. We would like to read these letters into the record on this in the interest of transparency and good governance. I'll now read the letter sent to the Minister for Planning on the 1st of August. Minister, we are asking for your urgent attention to serious problems with the way William Street has been classified as a district centre and the way the City of Vincent's planning process has been carried out. Our concerns are based on a detailed review of the William Street context analysis and the William Street planning framework, which shows no formal needs assessment or impact testing was done before giving William Street the district centre label, which is required under State Planning Policy 4.2. The planning framework doesn't comply with key state planning policies or the Borough Charter. There is evidence that population and economic data has been overstated by including figures from outside the area. There has been a lack of transparency with the community, tokenistic consultation, and preemptive approvals for developments based on the incorrect classifications. And finally, height and density pressures are already threatening state-registered heritage places, including Brookman and Moir Streets and the Perth Mosque, with weaker protections now in place than ever before. For these reasons, we have asked you to direct the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage to assess the procedural and evidentiary basis for the classification of William Street as a district centre. Advise the West Australian Planning Commission to consider suspending reliance on this designation until a statutory review is completed. Seek input from the Heritage Council of Western Australia regarding interface and heritage protection risks arising from the planning framework and adequacy of current City of Vincent heritage policies. And finally, issue guidance to the City of Vincent regarding the procedural steps required to alter activity centre classifications under SPP 4.2. I ask that the Council delay accepting this report in its current form until these matters have been fully investigated. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the meeting?
Good evening. My name is Gabby Fogliani. I live in Perth and I'm speaking to item 9.3. This is the letter that was issued to the Heritage Council Dear Chair and Council members, we write to formally request that the Heritage Council undertake a review of the cumulative risks to state heritage assets within and surrounding the William Street Town Centre in the City of Vincent. This request arises from a detailed review of the William Street context analysis and associated William Street planning framework. Summary of the concerns were that cumulative development pressure, the City of Vincent's misclassification of the area as a district centre, introduction of increased building height and density through the William Street planning framework, and reframing of the town centre as a nightlife and entertainment precinct placed disproportionate pressure on the adjacent heritage places. Weakened heritage protections of the repeal of the public specific planning controls by the City of Vincent, combined with a proposed built form incentives of up to 20 stories, places the precinct's heritage values at significant risk. The William Street planning framework does not account for visual context, urban morphology and cultural continuity, all central tenets of heritage planning under the Borough Charter. We respectfully request that the Heritage Council initiate a formal advisory review, provide written advice to the City of Vincent and WA Planning Commission regarding appropriate procedural expectations under the Heritage Act 2018 and the relevant policies, request referral of any major developments adjoining state registered heritage assets for independent heritage review, and engage with stakeholders, including property owners within the Brookman and Moir heritage area, before any finalisation of the William Street planning instruments. On a personal note, we live in a heritage area. We are custodians of heritage buildings. We aren't able to do anything with our properties except for maintain them and keep them in their form. We can't build a second story. We can't put garages out the front. Having 20 stories right by the end of our street is going to severely impact how we operate and function in our neighbourhood. Thank you.
Sorry, when you want to speak, you just need to come forward. You don't need to wait till I ask.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed Shakib, and I'm from the Perth Mosque on 427 William Street. So I'm speaking about item number 9.3. This is a letter written to the CEO and Mayor of the City of Perth, dated 1st of August 2025. Subject: community concerns regarding the William Street planning framework in the City of Vincent. Dear CEO and Mayor, we write to advise you of community concerns arising from the City of Vincent's classification of the William Street Town Centre as a district centre under Local Planning Scheme number 2 LPS2, and alert you to specific planning issues that have potential implications for the City of Perth as the bordering local government area. A detailed review attached raises serious concerns regarding the procedural, evidentiary and strategic basis upon which the William Street context analysis and associated William Street planning framework WSPF have been constructed. It has also identified specific aspects of the draft William Street planning framework which we consider to be inconsistent with the City of Perth's Precinct Plan number 1, Northbridge, including the promotion of William Street as a gateway to Northbridge and the CBD, and related decisions by the City of Vincent that have increased traffic congestion and reduced pedestrian amenity. The encouragement of nightlife activation and entertainment development north of Newcastle Street, in effect extending the boundaries of the Northbridge Entertainment Precinct as far as Bulwer Street. Proposed acceptable building heights that range from 4 to 8 stories across most of the core and community benefit. Incentives permitting up to 20 stories on 2 strategic sites. Request for ongoing engagement. Please note our general support for the City of Perth's plans, Precinct Plan number 1, Northbridge specifically, and the thoughtful balance of controls that these apply to preserve character and heritage values while allowing for appropriate development and change. We urge the City of Perth to continue close engagement with the City of Vincent to ensure that development plans are aligned and consistent, and to maintain a coherent approach to traffic management, pedestrian amenity, and preservation of character and heritage values across the local government boundary. We have communicated in parallel with the City of Vincent, Western Australia Planning Commission, Heritage Council of WA, Minister of for Planning and Minister for Local Government. This communication is part of a coordinated and transparent effort to ensure statutory integrity, heritage protection, and appropriate local development. Signatories to this letter include residents, landowners, and business owners directly affected by current and future planning decisions, including the custodians of state registered heritage places. We thank you for your attention to this matter.
My name's Andrew Gregg. I live in Perth and I'm referring to 9.3 as well. I will summarise this letter to the West Australian Planning Commission, as you are familiar with most of the content by now. Dear Chairperson, we write to formally request the WA Planning Commission undertake a review of the planning assumptions and classification currently applied to the William Street Town Centre, specifically its designation as a district centre under Local Planning Scheme number 2. The items I highlighted are procedural gaps, statutory non-compliance, strategic misalignment, overstatement of population and economic function, lack of transparency, potential third-party conflict of interest, preemptive approvals, and heritage and amenity risks. We respectfully request that the West Australian Planning Commission determine whether the district centre classification meets the procedural and evidentiary requirements of SPP 4.2, provide guidance to the City of Vincent on appropriate designation of the precinct, taking into account the proximity to the capital city centre and the actual catchment population, confirm whether any approvals, zoning amendments or policies enacted in reliance on the district centre classification should be reconsidered, and recommend a moratorium on further developments approvals involving district centre policies until the above matters are resolved. Just finally, a personal note, I have two children who are At last count, there are 17 children in my street who play on our street. They walk around the corner to get bubble tea together. They come with us to the shops to get groceries. I don't want to see my street that we enjoy currently being destroyed. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to be reading a letter sent to the Minister for Local Government, the Honourable.
Could you just give your name and your
Bruno
surname?
Santarelli, 24 Brookman Street, Perth. Yes, and it's the same issue. We write to raise a matter of planning governance and scheme integrity that we believe warrants your attention in your capacity as Minister for Local Government. Our request is grounded in the findings of a detailed review, which is the William Street Planning Framework Review, which raises serious concerns regarding the basis upon which the William Street context analysis and associated William Street planning framework have been constructed. Key concerns include procedural gaps. There's no evidence of a formal needs assessment or net benefit test or etc. Statutory non-compliance. The WSPF, the William Street Planning Framework, doesn't comply with precinct planning requirements, specifically design of the built environment, legibility scale, etc., and the Borough Charter. And additionally, the William Street context analysis and WSPF uses strategic site language to frame future density and development proposals without supporting statutory or policy criteria. These sites may be better understood, and I mean the strategic development sites, may be better understood as examples of unresolved land banking and should be managed through appropriate planning instruments, not speculative uplift. Strategic misalignment. William Street is located in close proximity to the Perth Capital Centre, which is the highest category centre of the state planning policy hierarchy, and elevation of William Street to the district centre status in this context risks duplication and essentially a misapplication of the activity centre hierarchy. There's a big gap in between as well. Overstatement of population and economic function. The supporting document overstates the residential population in our area and appears to incorporate commercial data associated with the City of Perth LGA. This undermines the integrity of the planning basis. There's a lack of transparency, no explicit communication with the community about the proposed classification as a district centre and its implications, lack of clarity on allocation of targets for urban infill, questionable public consultation on the planning framework, mischaracterisation of the precinct, etc. The potential of third-party conflict of interest, outsourcing of community engagement to the town teams movement, undue influence on the planning process, and potential conflict of interest of the Northbridge Common Town team. Preemptive approvals, development approvals in William Street, and heritage and amenity risks. In view of the above, we respectfully request that the Minister initiate an independent governance review under your powers as Minister for the Local Government, and to recommend to the Department of Land, of Local Government, there's a few subsections there, that planning processes rely on contested strategic documentation be temporarily suspended until the review is complete. Thanks.
Well done for sticking to time.
Slightly different flavour. Josh Toppelberg from Subiaco, and I'm here to speak to item 9.3. I'm representing my father and aunt, who are the third generation owners of a William Street property, which has been in the family since 1923. Family members, including myself, conducted business from this property for 94 years, from the time when my great-grandparents lived on Brookman Street. Put it another way, we have been the custodians of a property on William Street since the primary mode of transport was a horse and cart. I'm privileged also to speak on behalf of other owners with deep connections to the local area. The Rashids, the Rayners and the Palazzos have all had the William Street precinct as a part of their lives for decades. Collectively, these families own almost 6,000 square metres of property and have over 300 years of lived daily experience as a part of this precinct. We are just 4 of the hundreds of stories that form part of the very fabric of these streets. All I want to say tonight is that we hold a common view that the area is the ideal location for more intensive development, and particularly development that brings a more significant residential population into this part of Greater Perth. The location is unmatched in terms of access to transport, education, cultural, employment, and yes, entertainment facilities, and the framework should embrace these opportunities. I know there are people who hold a different view about what the area is or could be or should be, and I respect those points of view, but the skewing of the debate about the entire precinct to be so focused on the residential enclave to the west of Wellman Street is a distraction from the actual task that's before council. Whether the city chooses to proactively plan for its role in the much-needed antidote to Perth's urban sprawl, or it chooses to effectively outsource that to third-party decision makers, the reality has been laid bare in the hundreds of planning decisions that have been made over the last decade. The state is pulling every lever possible to encourage higher density urban development, and particularly in areas that have the existing transport and economic infrastructure to support it. The question is not if there will be taller buildings in this precinct. This is just Vincent's best opportunity to manage that process and to set clear guidelines regarding the expectations for how those developments should respect and enhance the character and the potential of the local area. My aunt sits here tonight, holding memories of sweeping the floors of her grandfather's shop on William Street almost 90 years ago. She's also a landlord who refused an application from a major national retailer to occupy our property because she did not feel their presence would enhance the precinct in the longer term. She chose to forego significant financial gain because of her understanding and passion for the history and character of the area, and her desire to see the evolution of William Street remain unique and celebrated for generations to come. The families that I'm representing here tonight are not greedy developers. We are a living part of the history of this place, and our aspirations for the precinct are as valid as anyone's for their own property or for the neighbourhood in general. No one is seeking to destroy the character or diminish the heritage properties and precincts. There is a world where significant development within the same postcode as the CBD can live harmoniously alongside historic streets and homes, and there are countless examples of this all over the globe. I'm here to affirm that there is an appetite for respectful, high-quality, intensive development that will shape this location for the next 100 years and beyond. I trust the council will make a decision tonight that embeds realistic provisions in the planning framework that is there to responsibly manage development across an entire city fringe precinct within a rapidly growing community. Thanks for the opportunity.
My name's Rob Piper. I live at 2 Brookman Street in Perth. I'm actually standing up to request direction because I don't know how the process works. I just applied for 15 minutes to respond to your comments, Ms. Ammon.
Okay, so and I'll be very clear on that. So I've given permission, because it's up to me to give it for you to have a deputation. The deputations happen later on in the agenda, and I call for that. It will be 5 minutes because it's always 5 minutes for every deputation, and there's never been a deviation from that. So you are welcome to come. I'll be calling for the deputation. You're the only deputation that's been approved for this evening. So I'll be calling you in at that point.
In that case, I will take 3 minutes now, if I may, to speak. So in regard to your comments, I just want to make a couple of points. Folks in...
Sorry, and I'd appreciate it. And I'd appreciate it also if you direct your comments to the actual issue and not to individuals. Thank you.
These aren't the issue, and you've used up some of my time. So if we can start again.
Sorry, excuse me. I'm actually in charge of this meeting, and I'm not using up your time. It'll be started again. But I'm going to reiterate that it is important that you direct your comments to the matters and not to individuals. Thank you. So we'll start again at 3 minutes now.
So the matters here are not matters around people in a heritage area being opposed to development. We would love to see City Tider developed. It's an eyesore. What we're concerned about here is that there has been improper practice. So I'd like to point out to you that local governments do not have the authority to classify district centres. That's done at a high level planning. All of Western Australia, every single district centre and every single local government is referenced in a higher level plan, except this one. And that should really be cause for concern. What I would like to have had 15 minutes to talk to, and this is covered in detail in the report, which I will acknowledge I wrote, and I remained anonymous on that, other than a letter, which I will put in later on to Minister Beasley, where I identified myself as the author of that report. And I had my reasons for wanting to remain anonymous. The reason I become public now is because I wanted to take the opportunity to identify myself and address what are very critical, factually incorrect statements that were made to the press. It's claimed that in 2018, this was classified as a district centre. And the point that town centres are being compelled to have infill density is incorrect. It's activity centres rated district centre or above. This has never been classified as such. In 2018, or in 2016, you proposed the creation of a district centre. There is a methodology for that. And it's in this State Planning Policy 4.2 activity centres. It's a very onerous process. There is no evidence that was ever followed. In 2018, you submitted the text of Local Planning Scheme number 2. There is no mention of a William Street District Centre in that. What you will find is on the scheme map, someone went in with a Sharpie and put the letter D. Now that does not meet the requirements of statutory policy. More concerning, later on, all governments were asked to assess your compliance with state planning, and this document was written by the City of Vincent planners, which identified William Street as an extension of the Capital City project. This is the only formal advice ever given to state government by this local government, and it did not classify it as a district centre, but as an extension of the Capital City, which is false. It is simply a falsehood. So the intent here was to take you through that litany of missteps, and there is a lot of other data that I won't have time to talk to, which shows, and when I get back up, have the 5 minutes, I will quote from the letter that I've given to the Minister, what I think is intentional subversion of the planning process. That's the concern that we're raising. And I know how risky it is to put that on the public record, and I do it nevertheless.
Would anyone else like to address the meeting? Okay, so if there's no one else that wishes to address the meeting, the items are going to be brought forward first on the agenda, so that's 12.4, and then we'll be dealing with 9.3. And there being no further questions, I close question time at 6:23. Okay, so Governance Manager, could you please confirm if any written statements were received?
Yes, through you, Mayor Zaman, we have received written statements and questions from Lexi Smith of Perth in relation to building works on Stewart Street, Sean Offer of Perth in relation to parking access on Summer Street, Glenn Christie of Mount Lawley in relation to item 10.1, and Dudley Moore of Highgate in relation to items 9.2 and 9.4. These have been circulated to council members, and responses to each question will be provided in the September council agenda.
Okay, so I'll move to applications for leave of absence, and Councillor Wolf has requested leave from the 2nd to the 18th of September inclusive. Do we have a mover for that? Sorry.
The 2nd to the 8th of September.
Oh, what did I say? Sorry, 2nd to the 8th of September inclusive. Okay, sorry. Do we have a mover for that? Okay, so that's moved and moved Councillor Castle. So all those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any other requests for leave of absence from any of the other councillors? It's a procedural. Okay. I'll get a seconder for that too. Seconded by Councillor Warner. There you go. They're unanimous. Okay, so then we move now to the receiving of a deputation, and as I have granted, Robert Piper has a 5-minute deputation in relation to the William Street planning framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. I'm having to quickly adjust because no one notified me that this would only be 5 minutes, and it's a very short space of time. Everything that I'm talking to is in the William Street Planning Framework Review. A couple of you know me. I dedicated time to the Audit Committee a number of years ago, and so there are a couple of you who I hope understand that I do have the credentials to make this sort of commentary, and that I have a reputation for ethical practice. So these are not trivial concerns that I'm raising. And I think the council here should be extremely concerned. I got to the point of explaining to you what should be done if the council wants to have an area classified as a district centre. This only applies to William Street. None of the other district centres, none of the other district centres in WA, just this one. This is the precedent that you're setting. Let me take you to, and I've said the local planning scheme says nothing about the transition to a district centre. The only work that was done was the placement of B on a couple of lots on the planning scheme. It's got about as much integrity as Donald Trump and his texter. What's more concerning is when you are asked to assess the compliance of the City of Vincent with the planning scheme. This report was written, Local Planning Strategy Report of Review in 2022. I want to read from you section 2.2, Town Centres, page 5. Under State Planning Policy 4.2, Activity Centres, the city contains part of the capital city centre, Perth. Doesn't say it's a district centre. That's a different type of centre, and that is false. This is the only document in which the City of Vincent has formally communicated to the Planning Commission the status of William Street. And it's a falsehood. It then goes on to say, the city contains also the secondary centre, Leederville, district centres, Highgate, Matt Lawley, Mount Hawthorn, Fitzgerald Street and Glendalough, all of which were predetermined to be district centres by state government. There is no evidence the City of Vincent at any stage has done the work that's required. There is no evidence of approval of a district centre. And indeed, if the district centre was approved, the mechanism is that your request with the supporting studies that you were supposed to have done go to that higher order. And the next time that plan is reviewed, they're considered. If it's accepted, they're taken into the plan. Those plans have been reviewed several times since the City of Vincent in 2018 lodged this, and they have not been updated, and William Street is still not listed as a district centre. This is the tip of the iceberg, and there are many, many other things in the report. I urge you to read it cover to cover that are of deep concern. You point out that there is an issue with infill density. Infill density is supposed to be done in district centres and above, also in station precincts, also in urban regeneration areas, also in preferred transport zones where you have high frequency public transport. William Street is none of those and never has been. I'd like to point though, this report, which was written in 2008, I believe, by then the town of Vincent, about the West Perth Regeneration Plan, the area now referred to as the Pickle District, which came in from the Metropolitan Development Authority, an area of old workshops, 0 heritage places, no residents. What this says is that the then town of Vincent embraced the need for high density infill. In fact, I haven't got time to read this. What I will say is there's modelling in this that says what's possible. You can get up to 1,600 residents on there. That's what was committed to. The new target is 150 for West Perth. So the question I have is how have these targets been allocated? Those numbers are on your website. They're hard to find. Look at the report I wrote. It'll tell you where to find them. And you have to ask the question, when that was written, why was the target for West Perth, which is next to Leederville, the lowest density suburb in the City of Vincent? And you're required to have remedial plans for low density suburbs. We're in the highest density. In fact, William Street passes through the highest density precinct in Perth, in the City of Perth. Why have you reduced by 95% the target for West Perth and for this area so that you can have an arts precinct in what is the lowest density area and transfer those numbers to an area which was never designated by state government for infill? I'm sorry if I sound angry, but I am angry. And everyone here should be angry. So you made the point, and I'm out of time, that state government could intervene if these things can't get resolved. I'll go on the record and say I invite them to, the sooner the better. It would be in the interests of the people and the residents of the City of Vincent. My time is up. 5 minutes wasn't enough. I urge you to read the report that I produced And can I put into the minutes the letter to Minister Beasley?
Yes. So we'll just, well, you can just bring that forward to the governance manager when you get a chance. Okay, so now I'm just going to move to the confirmation of minutes, and the resolution is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 15th July 2025 be confirmed. Do I have a mover for that? I moved Councillor Warner. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Hallett. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Okay, so I just want to make a few comments as the presiding member in relation to a different matter. There has been, of course, quite a lot of concern within the community because of what has happened with the removal of the trees from the islands in Hyde Park, and questions raised as to what's happening with the remediation. As people may well know, the decision was made at the national level to move from eradication of the polyphagous shothole borer to moving to containment. And in fact, we've received correspondence only today from DPIRD outlining some of the next steps in terms of what that's going to look like for us as local councils. And we're waiting to get more of the detail about how that is going to look. But what we do know is that prior to that, the decision was made by DPIRD that we actually had to remove all of the trees originally from both of the islands because the level of infestation was so high. It was very pleasing then that on one of the islands, the island which had been cleared 12 years ago because of excess numbers of weeds and had been replanted, that on close examination, a number of the trees were actually able to be saved. And the reason for that was precisely because when it was replanted out, the level of biodiversity that was put in at the time meant that there was a higher rate of resilience from a number of the trees that were there. But replanting has begun. It has been delayed because of all the rains. And so if you go out there now, you'll see that one of the islands is no longer an island. We're well and truly underwater, but we're waiting for the water to subside, and then we're going to be making sure that the soil is ready and the replanting is going to happen. So we've got 4,000 plants that are going into the islands alone this year, and that's part of an overall 4-year plan to make sure that it's planted out. So what we're hoping is that by focusing on habitat species, making sure that we've got rich diversity, which is going to help with resilience, making sure we've got species that are polyphagous shothole borer resistant and also resilient against climate change, that we actually are going to ensure that within a decade you won't have noticed that the plants have gone and it'll be stronger and better than ever. So that's certainly what we're aiming for and what the intention is. I do note that the loss of the trees has really affected a lot of the locals and regular users of the park. I got sent last week a beautiful short story that was very moving that had been written by Rebecca Roberts, who's a local author who talked about her experiences of seeing the trees go. And I also want to note the Pact Art Collective have put together an art exhibition at the Inglewood Arts Hub, where over the last year they have come out and captured all sorts of elements of Hyde Park and also the tree removal as well. It was meant to be opened on Saturday. Because of the rains, it got flooded out, and so they had to postpone, but it is going to be opening on Thursday night. And I would encourage people to go along to that, just recognising that it has had a very big impact on our community. But I'm really hoping that what we're going to end up with is actually going to be stronger and better as a result. It's the only way we can look at it, because the trees were going to go whether we wanted them to stay or not. Okay, CEO, do you have any declarations of interest that have been brought to your attention in relation to the items tonight?
Yes, through you, Mayor Zaman, two declarations of impartiality from Councillor Lafontaine. The first in relation to item 9.2, noting that Councillor Lafontaine is an employee of the Department of Education who made a submission as part of the community consultation process, and the same declaration for item 9.3, that the Department of Education also made a submission as part of the community engagement process.
there any other declarations of interest that anyone needs to put to the meeting? Okay. Okay, so the items, as I've said, which are already going to be brought forward, which are going to be brought forward are 12.4 and 9.3. We've got items which do require an absolute majority tonight. So that's going to be 12.2, 12.4 and 17.1. Okay, so Councillor Warner, do you have any other items that you wish to speak to? Councillor Wallace.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor LaFontaine. Councillor Greer.
9.1.
9.1. Councillor Castle, sorry. Councillor Alexander. Okay. Councillor Wolf.
No, thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Hallett. Okay, so I'll just now work out which items can be discussed on block. The CEO has got an important declaration of interest.
Through you, Mayor Zaman, just to add to the declarations of interest that I will declare a financial interest in relation to item 11.1, which is the annual performance review.
Annual performance review of the CEO. Okay, so that's noted.
Through you, Mayor Zaman, the items that we have listed for on block resolution are items 9.2, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, 9.7, 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, 12.1, 12.3 and 12.5.
Okay, so do I have a mover for that? So that's moved Councillor Hallett, seconded Councillor Wolf. Okay, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the first item, which is 12.4. This will require an absolute majority, and that's offer for sale, lot 823 and deposited plan, formerly 26 Brentham Street, Leederville. Do I have a mover? That's moved Councillor Wolf. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Warner. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I note that Arranmore didn't express interest in this block of land, and while of course I don't know their specific circumstance, I did wonder if that was a bit of a missed opportunity given the pressure that our growing inner city schools are under for space. But equally, we are experiencing a serious shortage of aged care beds, which are putting pressure on our hospital system, as we did hear the Premier say last week. So whilst we don't know exactly what is planned in terms of development for this site, given what we heard at the briefing last week about Rosewood's intentions to expand the number of aged care beds using this land, and given the cost, the time and the resourcing implications involved in going out to the broader market, I do support the officer recommendation, despite there being a below land value. Contextually, I do note that there is serious community concern already for what this means for the broader community, including children at Arranmore. And there has been some concern given that this process has been going on for quite a long time. So I did want to request that should this be passed tonight, that we do develop a comprehensive consultation plan. And I'm sure councillors would be happy to input into that at a future council workshop. Two other things to note is I did seek an amendment to be prepared at the very last minute. So thank you very much, administration, for that quick work. That amendment would explicitly require approval of a DA that extends the operation of an aged care facility before the sale would go through. There are some risks attached to this approach, but it would give some certainty to what would be developed on the site. But given those risks, I'm happy to see what other people think about this item before moving into that amendment. The last thing I did want to note was I have worked recently with Rosewood and their absolutely fantastic new engagement officer, Nikita DeGraff, on intergenerational activities that involved aged care residents and local daycare children. And these were really beautiful, a series of really beautiful events at the North Perth Community Garden, and they were also held at Rosewood premises. And they brought really fantastic, great joy to both the children and the residents. So whilst that didn't form part of my decision making on this matter, I did note that there's really great potential for Rosewood and Arranmore to work together using a similar model. And if there is support needed to continue that model with Arranmore that the city could provide, I really hope that those parties would be in touch. Thanks.
Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Actually, I don't have much more to add to that except that I support this recommendation. I have concerns that we are going below value, but I also believe this is a rather unique block of land and has its quirks. So that's what we get with that. As long as I'm confident that it's being pursued to be part of a future plan for senior residential care, and I hope that that is truly the case. And if it is, I think that's a terrific thing for us to support. So thank you.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. In considering whether to agree to this offer, I've been considering what's required of us under the Property Investment and Disposal Policy, where the expectation is really clear that for council to dispose of land, it should be at equal or more than the current market value, unless we can really justify the circumstances to sell it below market value. And I understand that justifications we heard a bit about last week include speed and the additional sale costs of going through a public tender process. However, I am really concerned that we don't have sufficient justification at this point to sell the land below the market value. It's quite significantly below market value. And for me, I would really like to understand more what the public benefit would come from the sale of this land so significantly below the market value. We've heard from the proponent that there may be a garden, there may be NDIS homes which would be leased to other providers, and there's a real need to expand the number of beds at the current facility. And all of those things would provide a benefit, but none of them are sure. At this point, I don't feel like as council we've been provided with enough clarity on what the site would be used for, and such there's no assurance that it would be utilised for something beautiful like a garden or intergenerational activities. Particularly, there's no assurance that any of the open space would be maintained. As such, I'm not comfortable supporting the officer's recommendation today, but I am open to considering what some of the amendments are before us. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor, through you. So we've got a market valuation that's been tabled that's significantly higher than the offer that's come through from Rosewood. I do understand that the shape and the adjoining land uses of this site potentially limit the development potential of it. But I also understand that those items were considered as part of the valuation process, so I don't think we should be marking down the price on that basis. I understand that policies do permit us to sell below market rates when council can justify doing so, and acknowledge that Rosewood is a registered charity and provides an important community service. But the $400,000 discount on market rate, I think, is a level of financial support that the city provides to very few organisations around Vincent. And very respectfully, I think if it was an open tender process and we were able to obtain that extra amount, we could find a use that is of greater benefit to a greater number of people in our community. I'm also keen to hear what the rest of the other councillors' opinions are, but I believe we shouldn't be proceeding with this item as written. We should instead be requesting administration conduct an open tender process. I understand that that'll add time to the process. However, I don't think we're in a particular rush to sell this site for any reason, and holding land over the last couple of years when it's increased in value so significantly has certainly been in the city's favour. With respect to administrative time and cost of running that process, I think those are both reasonable given the quantity of money that we're talking about here. So yeah, I do like Councillor Wolf's amendment, which adds a little bit more detail on ensuring that it would be used for a charitable purpose, but I still don't think that this justifies us giving a $400,000 discount to Rosewood.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have some questions. I'm just wondering about comparing the process between accepting this offer and going to public tender. Some of the concerns that have been raised in the community and from councillors is what the purpose of the whatever might be built on that lot would be, and whether that purpose is enough to justify a reduction in the value. If we were to go to public tender, what opportunities would council have to consider the purpose that is stated that the person making the offer would be considering? How would that play into the decision making for council if we were in the public tender process?
Through you, Ms. Mon, if we were to go through a public tender process, at the conclusion of that, we would present another report to council which tables all of the offers that were received. That would potentially be no different to the situation we're currently in, where if there was another prospective purchaser, we may not know what their intentions for the site, if they were successful, were to be either. So I wouldn't think that that was too much different to where we currently sit, where Rose would have some thoughts but haven't progressed any detailed planning.
Anyone else have anything further to say? I'll just make some comments. I have got in front of you an amendment to this proposal as well. My concern, and that's the one that can be found on the, she says, trying to find it. Thank you very much, on the white paper. My concern had been that if a decision is made to sell this portion of land, I'm very concerned to ensure that any proceeds are put aside to so that we have monies available specifically to be able to purchase new green open space if we public open space if it becomes available. And also when it might not be about purchase, it also might be about acquiring lands through other means, such as the management orders that we are currently managing to get over the East Perth Power Station foreshore, those areas that we're turning into public open space for ongoing usage. So I wanted to ensure that there were funds available to increase the amount of public open space where that occurs. It may be that we find a corner property, for example, with an older house that might be for sale that we may want to purchase as a localised park. I want to ensure that we've got monies available to replace like for like in terms of public open space, noting that this particular site is not considered to be optimal because of the way that it's configured. So on that note, if you look at the white page, it's at 6 and the additional wording that is in front of you, you'll note that I've said that apart from the expenditure that's allocated in recommendation 5, that we actually hold those monies in reserve for future acquisition and development of new public open space. So I'm on that. I'm going to move that. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded, Councillor Greer. Councillor Greer, did you want to speak on that?
Nothing further, thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? No, I can't. That's right. I can't move the amendment. So Councillor Greer's moved the amendment. Thanks, Councillor Greer, and Councillor Castle seconded. Okay, so Councillor Castle, do you wish to say anything? Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Okay, so all those in favour? Okay, that's carried unanimously. So now we've got the amended proposal in front of us. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amended proposal, noting that Councillor Wolf has got a further amendment in front of us? Councillor Wolf, are you wanting to move the amendment now?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. The amendment on the...
Before you do that, I just wanted to ask if you're having to move it. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded for Councillor, okay, seconded Councillor Hallett. So Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the amendment on the slightly less bright yellow. And what this amendment seeks to do is to attach a condition to the contract of sale that would give some certainty about what the site would be used for in terms of a future development outcome. And it limits that to a development application being approved for the land to be used for aged care purposes. So essentially seeking an extension of the current operations onto that, onto the land. So it would mean that we have some certainty around what the land would be used for, and it couldn't simply just be on sold for a different use. But I've been advised that this does come with some risk. It might have some influence on the current discussions around the sale, and it might mean that if a DA was approved down the track, say 6 to 12 months later than originally anticipated, would be when we might receive the funds for the public open space. So it might impact on the timing of that funding being received. Could I just check, have I captured that accurately in terms of the benefits and the risks? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Simon, yes, I might just expand on some of those if I may. In terms of a time frame, we heard last week that Rosewood are really at the thought stage, no pen to paper in terms of what a concept or any detailed design may look like. So it is hard to speculate as to what a time frame might be if we would go down this route and require a DA. The DA would have a statutory timeframe of 90 days, but the lead in to prepare plans, reports, go through pre-lodgement process with the city can be quite lengthy. So even speculating around 12 months may be a short period. The risk that would also come with is, I suppose, from a budget perspective. So this, going down this route, the city wouldn't receive the funds until the contract to sale has been, the transfer have occurred, which wouldn't happen until a DA has been approved. So the uncertainty around the time frame may mean we don't know when the funds would be intended to be received, which would impact on the city's forward planning around when we could look to upgrade the Brentham Street green space. That's currently planned for 26, 27, but really relies on getting funding in the next few months. If there was to be a requirement for a condition around a DA, that timeframe would push out. The, I suppose, flow-on effect of that is since this last came to council in 2021, there's been a fairly significant jump in construction costs. So the last estimate for the Brentham Street Reserve Playground was 299,000. That's now up to 450. So waiting another 12 months to 2 years may result in more of a cost escalation in that part. Perhaps the last point is around the land value as well. So depending on how long the timeframe was to take to conclude, the land value may increase, which would mean that perhaps the 2.6 million offer is further away from what that land value is at that time than it is currently. So all things to weigh up for council.
Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question about that. Does that mean that then it would be even more less likely that any offer would be available and it would basically be on as it is in terms of the current reserve and the, I guess, suboptimal use of it?
Through you, Mayor Simon, yeah, in short.
CEO.
Just to make a comment, and what we'd potentially do in line with Councillor Wolf's proposed amendment is essentially agree a deed with Rosewood, which would put all these conditions, which takes into account their potential timeframe and development horizon, which I do understand will also depend on passage of new aged care legislation by the federal government to help Rosewood understand what the funding model will be for any expansion of their number of beds. Just in terms of the wording of the amendment, administration, not Councillor Wolf, added within 2 years, just immediately before the council meeting. So we'd suggest deleting within 2 years, but make sure that we have a deed with an agreed timeframe with Rosewood, subject to council's satisfaction, which enables us to preserve the value of the offer over time if it's going to take 1, 2, 3 or 4 years, but also doesn't seek to try to rush a DA process, which needs to be a well-considered design process involving engagement with the community as well.
Just remind councillors that we're dealing with the amendment in front of us at the moment. So you've thought that there might be an amendment to an amendment, but that's not what we're looking at the moment. So I'm just confirming that. And also you can't move an amendment because, you know, you're not elected. All right. So Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got some questions about this amendment. The first one is that it's proposing to essentially insert a condition into a contract of sale or other legal agreement for Rosewood to obtain development approval. Obtaining development approval is not something that's within Rosewood's control. Is this an enforceable condition that we could include in this kind of a contract?
Through Mayor Zaman, yes, it is. We have been speaking with our lawyers who have been helping with the preparation of the contract documents. So.
Thank you. That's good. Preempted my question. Would the result of this amendment be that something is placed on the title?
Mayor Zaman, yes, that can carry through the process. So at the time that the land is transferred from the city to Rosewood, if it was to play out that way, the city is able to place a caveat on the title, and that would, I suppose, lock in obligations.
So I'm just wondering how that actually plays out, because having a development application approved is no guarantee that what is approved will be built. What are we talking about in terms of a caveat that would actually protect or ensure that aged care is built on this premises?
Through you, Mayor Zaman, it's hard to go into any level of detail about what we are trying to protect because we don't quite know, and neither do Rosewood, what the final plans would be, aside from what has been, I suppose, speculated earlier. So what has been worded up in the amendment is around the aged care facility, and which Rosewood currently operate, and allowing, I guess, an expansion of that in some form. In terms of the query about being able to get a DA, but that not necessarily resulting in development, there is the opportunity through the deed as part of the contract of sale where we can also identify that any DA would have to be substantially commenced. So that would fall back to part of the caveat. So if that didn't occur, the city would be in a position to pursue separate action.
Okay, so just to be clear, what I'm conscious of is that what we're trying to preserve here or to have some surety around is what will actually happen, and the ability of council to condition that with both Rosewood and with any future owner of the property. I'm not sure I'm quite clear how that caveat could work, but I'll take your word for it. My other questions are about what discussions have been had with Rosewood about this amendment.
Through Mayor Zaman, so since the briefing last week, we've just had a very high level discussion with Rosewood and understand that they are open. They are open to a condition in principle, but we haven't talked at any level of detail about what that would look like.
And have those discussions included any conversations on a variation on the offer, the price?
Through Mayor Zaman, no.
So if council was to accept this amendment, we're not in a position to be certain that it would be accepted by Rosewood as it currently stands. If the motion was amended and then accepted by council, administration would only have the ability to accept an offer with those conditions for 2.6 million or higher, presumably?
Through you, Ms. Mon, yes. So if as part of the negotiations to come, if we weren't able to come to an arrangement around an acceptable condition to go into the contract of sale, then council's resolution wouldn't, I suppose, hold up. So we would need to come back and consider the next steps.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? Councillor Wolf, do you want to say anything?
I do, thank you, Mayor. Having listened to the discussion around the timings around the development application as well as the regulatory changes on foot, I would certainly be open to amending the amendment to remove those additional words around within 2 years.
Councillor, it's your amendment. Are you saying that you're amending your amendment? Okay, so are people clear on that? Councillor Hallett, are you comfortable with the amended amendment? Okay, so just confirming that working from this colour, which is, I don't know, beige, apricot, I don't know, we're saying we're simply precluding the words within 2 years. Is that correct? Okay, so people are clear on that. All right, so now I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour? Okay. Against? Okay, that's only Mayor's one against. Thank you. All right, so we've now got an amended motion in front of us. It's got 2 amendments in front of it. Okay, I'm going to, has anyone who has not spoken on the substantive? Yes, Councillor Castle.
Thank you. I think I've only asked a question, so I'm going to speak on it. I'm very conflicted about this one. I think it is a big responsibility of council to manage the funds that we have available to us in a responsible way, and a significant reduction in the sale price or the offer price based compared to the value is no small thing. To be sure that this would be the best option for council, I think we would require some certainty around how the property would be used. And although the amendment probably does assist with that, I'm not sure I'm convinced that that goes far enough. I do understand the concerns of both the community and of administration about how long this has gone on for. It's certainly been a topic of discussion for a long time that I've been on council. I don't think I believe that we should rush this process at the last hurdle. I think on that basis, I'm not going to support it. I would hope that the public tender would result in this offer being represented along with others, and would give council a little bit more comfort in knowing that we have tested the market, and that if we are to accept a lower offer, then that is on a reasonable basis and having considered all other options.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Okay, Councillor Wolf, do you wish to say anything in conclusion? Okay, I'm going to put the amended motion. So all those in favour? Against? Okay, so that motion has lapsed. And please put your hands up for against. And the people who have voted against are Councillor Hallett, Councillor Greer, Councillor Castle, Councillor LaFontaine and Councillor Wallace. Okay, so now we move on to the next item. So the next item is 9.3, outcomes of advertising William Street Planning Framework. So do we have a mover for that? Moved Councillor Hallett. Do we have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Wolf. Councillor Hallett.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few questions to start with to the manager. There was some commentary around the district designation. Just wondering if you can talk through how that intersects with this particular document and what's instigating us to create this framework, and how it may or may not be separate to district designation.
Mayors Amon, so the city's planning scheme that was gazetted in May 2018 identified district centre for this section of William Street. But the driver for coming up with a planning framework for William Street is not tied to that district centre zoning. Our local planning strategy has an action for us to look at developing bespoke planning frameworks for each of our town centres. William Street being one, but there's also Mount Hawthorn, North Perth, Beaufort Street, which is also on tonight's agenda. And separate to those, we've also recently done both Claysbrook around the concrete batching plants and the Piggle District. Those two areas, those are not zoned as district centre, mixed use and commercial respectively. So the driver is really around that need to provide a more responsive and contemporary planning framework than what our built form policy that sets the height standards currently does. That's 9 years old, probably doesn't stack up with the test of time. So this journey has really been to provide more of a contemporary vision, which responds to each of our distinct localities rather than a particular zoning.
Yeah, and just to follow up around there was a comment around the infill targets and the Pickle District and versus William. Can you just comment on how that's evolved and why there's been changes in that vision?
Mayor Zaman, the Pickle District is probably a unique context in that it is historically zoned as industrial under the MRS. So there has always been a tension there about residential development, but when we prepared the Pickle District planning framework a year ago, which when it was endorsed, that looked at increasing building height to accommodate that mix of uses. So I suppose that would certainly be doing its part in the city's overall density targets. The density targets from the state government are I suppose around a broad number of 11,500 new dwellings by 2050, but the location of those is left somewhat up to local governments to sort out where they go, and if we can't do that in an orderly manner, the department will step in and effectively dictate where that goes. So again, consistent with our planning strategy, it's been to look at our town centres as big opportunities for accommodating that density to leave the lower lying residential areas effectively as they are. Planning strategy, which is currently under review at the moment, looks to really, I suppose, distribute the dwellings across those areas, but also making sure that each area has enough infill that it can sustain a high level of vibrancy and amenity.
Specifically for mixed use areas being important. Thank you for that. I've got a series of amendments for this item, but in general, I do want to speak to my support generally with some added protections. I think it is really important that we have a current planning framework that situates our vision for this area alongside the suite of the other planning frameworks that we've got around the city, and provide some clear direction to developers, to decision makers, which in many cases will not be us, and also to the community about what do we as a whole community see for future development, because it is inevitable that there will be development, and it's important that we have a current policy that ODAPs and other bodies can look to and go, this is what vision Vincent has for this space, and other development applications that are put forward in line with that. Understanding that it's due regard only, and unfortunately we cannot put things that are exact caps that will then be, I guess, concrete protections for the community, but we can certainly provide some direction in general. So I do support this. I think there's a real balance here between supporting planned development and also protecting the residential areas, the heritage spaces in this precinct. I think in general, I think where we've landed post-advertising, where there's been quite a few changes, I think we're a lot closer there. And then I've got a couple of amendments to put forward, but happy to hear from other people.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to all the residents who've put significant time and energy into sharing their views on this item. The first question in the community's report was, why do we need a revised William Street planning framework? So I'll start there in explaining my support for this item. Perth is one of the longest cities in the world, with urban sprawl that strains infrastructure, costs taxpayers, and impacts the environment. As our population grows and we face a housing supply crisis, it's been recognised by planners, academics, government, and the NGO sector that local governments must create more medium and high density options in middle ring and inner city areas. As we've heard, the state government's target for Vincent is 11,500 new dwellings and 25,000 new residents by 2050. The William Street precinct, which is close to the CBD, has excellent public transport and is already seeing some mixed-use growth, is well placed to contribute alongside our other town centres, transitional zones, and other main roads across the city. This framework doesn't give automatic approval to build. It sets policy that decision makers have to give due regard when assessing development applications. Development assessment panels and the WA Planning Commission have already been known to approve density above our outdated guidance in this space. And the risk is that this will continue and occur in areas that are inappropriate. And the other risk that we heard from administration is around the department stepping in and setting those areas where we do see high development. But this framework is our chance to get ahead of that, to guide where and how development happens based on planning considerations, location, community need, and strategic opportunities around ownership. So whilst we might see decision makers approving additional height, without an updated framework, the community has less influence going forward, not more. I note that there are amendments on the table that give further protections that I'm very keen to discuss, but broadly, I believe that the framework is appropriate to move forward with. It seeks to manage the transition between higher and lower scale areas, and it seeks to balance the growth with existing character and to maintain heritage areas like Brookman Moir, as we've heard. And we've heard a lot about the structural concerns around that precinct. So I do appreciate some advice that we got from administration, noting that the city's stated policy position is against sheet piling construction due to the impacts that this has on neighbouring homes, that there are requirements in place for construction plans to be approved by the city for any major development, and that due to the high water table, intensive excavation and basement parking construction are highly unlikely in this area. Through the place planning actions, the framework seeks to activate neighbourhood streets to make them more pedestrian friendly for people of all ages. The framework also aligns with our strategic goals around accessibility, thriving places, sensitive design, and sustainability. I also feel that the framework takes a fair approach to infill. As we've seen in some other jurisdictions, one inner city location might carry the full load of density for a local government area that might seek to infill increasingly as you move from an outer city area towards the city. But this framework is part of a broader suite, as we've heard, that spreads growth across multiple town centres, main roads and transitional areas across Vincent. So overall, this is not about revenue raising, as has been alluded to. It's about shaping change before it's imposed on us. With the federal funding that we've secured to ensure our infrastructure is ready for the next wave of infill, this framework is the best tool that we have to try and influence future development around William Street and to shape growth in the community's long-term interests in a strategic way.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this proposal? Councillor Warner.
Actually, I just have a question. We heard tonight of the letters that have been written to the ministers for planning and for local government, to the Heritage Council, the City of Perth and the WAPC. They've all requested a review into the process of creating this framework. I know all of those letters were quite recently done, so they probably haven't had any responses yet. But if they were to get a positive response for them to say, yes, we're going to do a review into this, does that undo any decision that we make tonight?
Through you, Mayor Simon, no, I wouldn't say so. I think if council was to adopt the framework tonight and the outcome next week was that somebody requested that review to take place, we would just allow that review to take place and see what the outcomes were to then inform what happens next with the framework. So whether there was further changes needed or whether it was another option, I think we would let that review take place without preempting anything.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Councillor Greer. Oh no, or do you want Councillor Wallace? Councillor Wallace.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Amon. Yeah, look, thanks to admin for their hard work on this document, and in particular, thank you to the residents and wider community for their participation in the consultation period. I think it's raised a lot of very valid issues on both sides of the aisle. I think these have mostly been addressed either via modifications to the advertised framework in the document you see tonight, and potentially subsequently by a few amendments that have been circulated. And I think between those two, most issues have been addressed. Significantly, though, I think the framework that's tabled tonight and the proposed amendments will still result in a built form outcome that are far too impactful on the Brookman-Moir Heritage Precinct. The heritage values of that precinct are significant. I think they've been well discussed within the community submissions we've received tonight and in the city's own publications. The precinct, I think, has state significance. While there's other outstanding examples of individual heritage buildings around Western Australia, to have such a collection of homes so consistent and well preserved is extremely rare, and we should be doing everything we can to protect it and the amenity it provides. I asked a question last week how the significant development site designation and the height bonuses associated with it were given to the two adjacent sites, what's called the William Street car park to the east and the City Toyota site to the south. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but significant weight was given to the site area, tenure and existing development when allocating the SDSs and the height that comes with it. And I don't think that this, or I don't necessarily agree that this is an appropriate basis to be making such a planning decision. Personally, I put more weight on the existing and desired character of the neighbourhood, existing being the relative, outside of Brookman-Moir, being the relatively lower density apartments, for example, 3 to 4 stories to the south on Newcastle and Zemplis, or the 5 to 6 that we see on Newcastle and Money. I think a good example of transitioning out of the precinct is if you look to the west, where you've got the 3-storey row townhouses on Lake, and then you've got the recently approved apartments that are going up against the Stewart Street Reserve. For desired character, I personally enjoy the strip mall environment of the William Street car park. I don't see there any urgency to grant height bonuses to spur the redevelopment of that. And I think that height and density at the car park on Toyota sites that is consistent with that existing scale that is there on Lake, Zemplis and Money would be an appropriate transition from that heritage precinct into greater heights along William Street and further to the east. Discuss these amendments when they come forward. I support most of them as written, as I do think they improve the framework, but I'd still very much prefer tonight that we defer this item and allow it to be revised to reassess the transition to the Brookman-Moir precinct and be brought back at a later date to the council, allowing for some further community feedback on the changes. Thank you.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zamon. And thank you so much to everyone who has taken the time to come tonight and talk to us and express your views. It has been deeply appreciated, both what we've heard over the last few weeks and through the consultation process that this document has gone through. Overall, I'm supportive in principle of having a planning framework, and I just want to acknowledge the significant amount of work that it takes to go into this today. Being supportive of the intent of the planning framework, as a city, we certainly need to be encouraging density. We need really strong public open spaces with beautiful design. This part of William Street is going to change as we go forward, but it certainly is in need of investment. And that investment must bring more people within this part of our city, especially so close to so many amenities. It is vital that we have a planning framework in place, as other people have already discussed. We need to clearly communicate to the state government and to developers what our community vision is for William Street. Otherwise, we risk significant development that is a lose-lose for everyone that lives here. Similar to Councillor Wallace, I do think there are some key outstanding items that we've got a divergence of views on in the community. What my hope is for this document is it's something we can be really proud of as a community and that we get it right. It's our intent to say, hey, developers, this is what we want. Please come and invest in our community because we're fabulous and we're wonderful. And at the moment, I don't feel like, as it's written, that it is something that we can all collectively be proud of to set that vision for what we want as a community, particularly the height of the strategic development sites and the impacts on the Brookman-Moir precinct and the Perth Mosque. So I'd welcome amendments from our fellow councillors keen to discuss those, but as it's written, I've certainly got concerns that the community have raised that it's not quite bang on where we need it to be. Thank you.
Councillor LaFontaine.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I acknowledge that the report details an overall support of the framework from the Imagine Vincent submissions. However, listening to the residents and stakeholders tonight in the gallery, it is clear that there is a serious concern about this framework. In addition, the community consultation shows a majority disagreement with the proposed building heights and those proposed building heights on the strategic development sites as well. So in general, I'm not supportive of approving this framework tonight, but I would also consider a deferral. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? We've got a series of amendments in front of us. Councillor Hallett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start with the simplest.
Which is which one?
The one on the yellow.
Okay, so if you go to the one on the yellow, do we have a seconder for that? Seconder for that. Okay, seconded, Councillor Wallace. Okay, Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. So this is, I mean, essentially it's almost a typo fix because it's related to the William Street North sub-precinct, which was advertised at stories with a community benefit height of 7 stories. The community benefit heights were then removed in the proposal before us, but it was left at 5 instead of the 6 that it's in our current policy setting. So it's just to revert back to the 6 stories.
Councillor Wallace.
A very sensible amendment.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? Okay, I'm going to put the amendment then. All those in favour? Against? Okay, Councillor LaFontaine against. That amendment is carried. Councillor Hallett, do you have any further amendments?
Yes, thank you. The other one, just a smaller one, is related to the podium height for the William Core sub-precinct.
Can I just confirm which colour is the green one? Okay.
Yep.
So, and can I say, is there a seconder for this particular item? Is there a seconder for this amendment? Seconded by Councillor Warner. Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. So this is related to the William Core sub-precinct, specifically how it interfaces with Money Street and the podium height, and just making it consistent with some other podiums, 3 stories to the 4 stories, but not changing the other ones that have been set at 3.
Councillor Warner, does anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? Okay, I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour? Okay, against? Okay, that's Councillor LaFontaine is against. That amendment is carried. And Councillor Hallett, you have a third amendment on an orange piece of paper. Are you wishing to move that?
Yes, can I please move that?
Is there a seconder for this amendment? Seconded, Councillor Warner. Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. So this has a few aspects to it. The main one is about trying to set some specific parameters around the unidentified strategic development sites, in part because they were, I guess, administration quite rightly, without verbaling you, has said that within planning we often want flexibility because sometimes standard rules around lots doesn't deliver the best outcome. And so sometimes you might have an amazing development proposal that doesn't meet a particular guideline, but it delivers on a range of others. So we do want some flexibility in interpretation. What I am concerned about, though, is that leaving that completely open to justifying the community kind of advantages of whether it's environmental or design without setting some level of height restriction doesn't signify to the community and developers what we're really looking for. So whilst it's only given due regard by other bodies, at least it provides a much stronger, I guess, indication of what we're after. So that has put back the unidentified SDS in there with 12 stories on sites with a minimum lot size of 1,500 in the William Core and Newcastle, and west of William and north of Forbes. 14 stories within William Core and Newcastle and east of William Street for 1,500, and then up to 16 on minimum lot size of 2,000 William Core, Newcastle Street, and south of Forbes and Money Street. It's then also adjusted a couple of the items related to the William Street car park STS, which has replaced the number at 12 stories, and it's also added in on the second page for councillors, right at the top, the Roman numeral for 2, building above the 3-storey podium to be set back for a minimum of 15 metres from Wellman Street. So it's an increased setback has been added in. And then numeral 1 above that has been adjusted to 12.5 metres for any podiums within 12.5 metres of Wellman Street, and a maximum 4 along William Street. So I guess just generally, it's about trying to add a little bit more specificity for decision makers and developers. I know it doesn't go all the way that some community members might like in terms of reducing the heights, but I think for me that was about finding a balance between what's likely to come and maintaining some level of meaningful and realistic input.
Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Basically, quite briefly, what we're doing here is trying to manage the inevitable process and shape the change. So I think that these amendments help with that, with assuring a bit more guidance as we work forward. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this proposed amendment? Okay, in that case, I will put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that's Councillor LaFontaine is against. There's now a final proposed. I had prepared one, but of course I can't move this. Councillor Hallett, I'm looking at it because it's fairly consistent with the one that you just moved, actually. I'm just going to note that. So if I can just point you all to the grey olive one. Councillor Hallett, you're prepared to move that, are you? Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Warner. Okay, Councillor Hallett.
I'm happy for you to speak to it.
Okay. Councillor Warner. Okay, so similar to the last amendment, I'm proposing that an additional visual impact assessment be incorporated as a requirement for any future proposed development, looking at the visual impact based on key vantage points within the area, including Forbes Road, Lake Street, Brookman Street, Moir Street, William Street, Robinson Avenue, and Wellman Street. So that's the intention behind that. And it also means that even though this would probably be required and stipulated by the city anyway, it makes it very clear to anyone who's contemplating building that this is going to be part of that requirement as well. So it is an extra layer, but I think it makes it clear that it's an explicit safeguard. Councillor, does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Okay, Councillor Hallett.
Happy to support and close the debate.
Okay, so I'll be putting the amendment. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to go back to the substantive, now significantly amended proposal. I'm just trying to ascertain, remember who has not spoken on the substantive yet, and that is Councillor Castle. So Councillor Castle, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I am supportive of the officer recommendation as amended, and thank you very much for the amendments that were prepared. They were very helpful and they have gone a significant way to allaying my concerns about how this planning framework would interact with very precious areas of our city. I think, as others have said, we can't sit back and do nothing. If we don't make a decision, that decision will be made for us. And that is something that the city should not be putting themselves into position of. We need to be ahead of the developments and the density required in this area. I think, as we can all clearly see, regardless of what hierarchy classification it may have, this area of the City of Vincent is well placed to handle more density. It is well serviced by public transport, is very close to the CBD and to other amenity, and it is an appropriate place for the city to absorb some more height and some more people living in the area. It's something that is desperately needed across the whole of Perth. It is an issue that we are addressing across all of our town centres with our planning frameworks, and William Street is no exception to that. I welcome the changes that we've seen through these amendments to offer further protections and further transition to the Brookman-Moir Heritage Area, but I think that where we have now landed strikes a good balance in meeting the needs of not just the city and the state government, but of our community, of the many people who need more housing available to them, and the needs of those existing residents and business owners who are already in the area. So I will be supporting the amended proposal.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this proposal? Okay, Councillor Hallett, do you wish to say anything in closing? Okay, in that case, I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Against? Okay, so against is Councillor Greer, Councillor LaFontaine, Councillor Wallace, and that proposal is carried. Thank you. We now move on to the next item, which is outcome of advertising, local planning policy, short-term accommodation and local planning scheme. Do I have a mover for this? Moved Councillor Greer. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Hallett. Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. And I want to begin by thanking everyone who's participated in the consultation through this. We've had a lively debate through the feedback process, and I'm very grateful for hearing everybody's perspectives. I wanted to start by acknowledging that we're discussing this policy tonight in the context of a housing crisis, where too many people are going without secure, affordable or an accessible place to live. There's the consequence of a lack of action of addressing the housing crisis. People are sleeping in their cars, on friends' sofas, and in our public open spaces. And for those who are able to have a home, for many of our renters in Vincent, they face years of astronomical rent increases, and buying a home in the city of Vincent is rapidly becoming unattainable for so many people. This situation is being driven by many factors, where other levels of government have failed to make the sufficient investments in social and affordable housing, and they've got policy settings where it's cheaper to buy your third or fourth investment property than your home, where there are no protections on how much your rent can increase by. In this context, I'm really proud that the City of Vincent is considering progressive ideas on how to manage short-term accommodation in our city. What we're seeking to do is what's within our immediate control to ensure that Vincent remains a place where all members of our community can have the opportunity to live in a safe and secure home in Vincent. We're seeking to ensure our community remains vibrant, with business in appropriate locations, and where long-term housing remains our goal. For short-term accommodation, there are a few considerations. The first is how to reduce the impact of immediately living close by to an unhosted short-term accommodation. Many of us have lived in close proximity to one of these short-term accommodations, unhosted, and the impact of having a commercial property in your street is not insignificant. From struggling to find street parking, to having a party pumping until the early hours of the morning, or losing the connection to your neighbours when a long-term rental is replaced by new visitors each and every week. The policy we are considering tonight seeks to provide some further protections for those who live close to unhosted short-term accommodation, including there being a minimum number of nights over the weekend, a minimum number of on-site parking bays that must be provided, and a maximum of adult guests per bedroom. This policy also requires unhosted short-term accommodation to have a sign with contact details that are visible, and I think this will go some way to giving residents who are dissatisfied with an unhosted short-term accommodation in their street some power to raise concerns. Another consideration is how to ensure that we're incentivising houses being used for long-term homes and not investment holiday homes. I'm really pleased that the policy we're considering tonight has time limit of approvals. As we saw through our community consultation, many people in our community support further limits on unhosted short-term accommodation, including a ban in residential areas and a limit on the number of nights an unhosted short-term accommodation can be leased out each year. I find it really unfortunate that the City of Vincent is not able to do these because of the state government's position, and I think many members of our community would expect the state government to do much more. And I would like to foreshadow that I have got an amendment on the purple that would seek to further support our goal of ensuring that we provide long-term housing in residential areas in Vincent, and that would be to reduce the radius from 400 to 100 metres. But I'll discuss that once I've heard other people's views. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hallett.
I concur with Councillor Greer, and thank you for your insightful interrogation of this throughout the process.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Okay, Councillor Greer, do you want to move your amendment on the purple paper?
Yes, please.
Okay, so if everyone can turn their attention to the purple paper, do we have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Hallett. Councillor Greer.
Thank you. In the policy as is currently written, the general location criteria encourages unhosted short-term accommodation within 400 metres of tourist destinations and high-frequency public transport routes, where that property has a direct interface to noise-generating non-residential use or when ambient noise exists. These high-frequency public transport routes are along our main corridors: Beaufort Street, Fitzgerald Street, Charles Street, William Street. Between these streets are many of Vincent's best inner-city residential areas, streets that are currently brimming with community and are living with the reality of ambient noise. Within 400 metres of these main roads is the majority of the city of Vincent, leaving open the possibility of people being able to argue their case on short-term unhosted accommodation can be permitted in our inner-city residential areas. The amendment I'm putting forward seeks to maintain the requirement that unhosted short-term accommodation be next to noise-generating non-residential uses. However, it reduces the location criteria to be within 100 metres of a tourist destination or high-frequency public transport areas. In my opinion, reducing this to within 100 metres provides additional protections to residential areas. In this policy, we haven't got a required noise limit or what is deemed acceptable ambient noise. As such, the only protection is the fixed point in 100-metre terms in the distance from a tourist attraction and a high-frequency public transport. And it's my hope that reducing this to within 100 metres, that our short-term accommodation policy will be strengthened in its goal of ensuring that our residential zones continue to fulfil their primary purpose of providing long-term housing opportunities.
Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Happy to support this. I think 100 is a bit more realistic when we're thinking about an inner city local government and the level of closeness pretty much every block has to major transport routes. I know that it's got two prongs, and so it wouldn't actually mean that everywhere in Vincent would be impacted, but I think 100 just makes that a lot clearer. Yeah.
Councillor Castle.
I have a question. It might be semantic, but I'm just wondering, what is the difference between walkable distance and distance? Surely 100 metres is 100 metres.
Through you, Mayor Simon, I suppose within the planning sphere, the term walkable is probably commonly used. So when we would assess that clause, it would be how do you actually manage to walk the streets to get to the stop rather than drawing a big circle and as the crow flies.
That makes sense. Thank you. So in terms of impact of reducing 400 to 100, is that, you'll have to forgive me because I'm not very good at visualising distance, is 100 metres likely to be 1 block, 2 blocks? What's it on the average block, as in road block? How far is that likely to be from a main street?
Through you, Mayor Simon, when we were, I suppose, mapping it out spatially, the 400 metres, because Vincent is almost surrounded on all ends by a level of high frequency transport, it almost took you into mid-block within a residential area. Reducing down to 100 really leaves you to a handful on either end.
Anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? Oh, I've got a question. Oh no, that's okay. I'll wait till we have the substandard one. So anyone else? So nobody wish to speak to the amendment. Councillor Greer, do you wish to say anything in conclusion?
No, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So now we go back to the substantive amendment, a substantive motion as amended. Does anyone else is anyone who hasn't yet spoken on that wish to speak? I would just want to ask a question of administration. Can I just confirm that for those people who are in the City of Vincent who have already made applications successfully for unhosted short-term residential accommodation, this new policy doesn't affect them, does it? That their current approvals will continue regardless of consistency with this new framework. Can I just confirm that's the case?
To you, Mayor Zaman, yes, that's correct. So if you have an existing approval and you continue to operate in accordance with that, the policy doesn't apply retrospectively. The only difference would be if you have a current approval and that has a time limit on it. When that time limit reaches the end and if they wish to continue, they would have to submit a new application. The new policy would apply to that.
Okay, but I just want to confirm also that if you have been operating an unhosted STRA and have never done the appropriate thing and made application, and if it turns out that you are now no longer going to be able to be eligible for that because it's inconsistent with this, that really is on you because you have never made application to the council in the first place as per the requirements. I just want to confirm that my understanding of that is correct.
To you, Mayor Zaman, yes, that is also correct. So there is exemptions in place for unhosted short-term accommodation to operate for 90 nights in a 12-month period. So outside of that, you would need a DA if you haven't previously, or if you haven't got a current DA, your application will be assessed against this policy.
Okay, it's just we did receive quite a bit of correspondence from people who are currently operating within the City of Vincent and who are concerned because they're saying this is a source of their commercial income because this is a commercial operation operating within residential areas. Just confirming that if they have actually sought and been granted previous approval as per their requirement, then it doesn't affect them. It's only those people that have been operating without permission. I'm just confirming that I've got that understanding correct.
You may have gone correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak on the substantive amended motion? Councillor Greer, is there anything that you wish to say in conclusion? Okay, I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to move on to item 12.2, to keep swapping glasses, which is the outcome of advertising and adoption of amended attendance at events policy, noting that this requires an absolute majority decision, okay, which is why we're discussing it now. Is there anyone who is happy to move this proposal? Moved Councillor Wolf. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Wallace. Councillor Wolf, do you wish to say anything? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of the recommendation and don't have any further comments about the policy itself. But seeing as this was an absolute majority item, I'll use the opportunity for a sort of a bit of a side note. I did notice that one of the changes in the track change document was to change CEO himself to CEO themselves. And I was surprised that that got through the last review in 2021 because women could be CEOs in 2021. So I was just hopeful that in future reviews and perhaps as an administrative update of our existing policy settings outside of the review process, we could administratively change all of those gendered references because that doesn't reflect the values of council or administration.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember who was, I think it was Councillor Wallace. You were, yes.
Nothing from me, thank you, Mayor.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? I'm going to put this then. We need an absolute majority. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we get on to the final item, and for this we will need to agree to go in camera. And that is the annual CEO. It's 11.1, an annual CEO performance review and KPIs. So, do I have a mover that we go in camera? So moved Councillor Hallett, seconded Councillor Castle. I'll move that. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. So now we're going to go in camera. So for anyone who is watching on the live stream, we will be turning that off now. And then what we will be doing is returning afterwards. Thank you. So can I just confirm the live stream? Okay, so just confirming, so thank you for those people who've waited long. It's not long because it's recorded, but we've just gone in camera, and the council by absolute majority, actually unanimously, has received the Chief Executive Officer's Annual Performance 2024-2025 report to council, included as confidential attachment 1. Endorses the outcome of the performance review that the Chief Executive Officer has met the performance expectations of the position for the 2024-2025 review period. Approves the outcome of the remuneration review that the CEO receive an increase of 3.5% to the cash component of his total remuneration package effective 18th of October 2025. Approves the draft CEO key performance indicators for the 2025-2026 review period contained in confidential attachment 2, approves the CEO's request to participate in the city's productivity scheme, and requests that a 6-monthly report is presented to the CEO performance review panel by February 2026. So there being no further business to conduct, I thank everyone who is in attendance and on the live stream, and I close the meeting at 8:03. Thank you. Wendy, can you please